Hello everyone, I'm Wendell Jones and welcome to this edition of the program, The Platform. On this program, we examine national issues. How can we protect ourselves against criminals who don't fear dying? How do you protect against a person who is ready to die and who is really not in any fear? On our program today, we are going to be discussing the social situation in our country, and our guest on the program today is Drexel, who I had the pleasure of interviewing on radio on our Issues of the Day program on Love 97. And Drexel has written a book, The Fight of My Life is Wrapped Up in My Father. This is the book that we have with us today. And today we are going to examine his book. We're going to talk to him about how he came to be what he is. He is an author. Drexel, welcome to the program.
Mr. Jones, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for coming again to this facility. We had a good conversation on radio, and it was well received. As a matter of fact, that program got rave reviews because of your presence, so I thank you so very much.
Yes, of course, due to the questions you asked as well.
Okay, you're very kind. Why did you write the book?
Actually, Mr. Jones, I never wanted to write a book with my life story. I was more interested in learning why did I and so many thousands of young men took the path we did. Thus, it was during my interview with former gang leaders, drug dealers, and death row inmates that I discovered that we all shared a common bond of neglect, rejection, and fatherlessness. Okay.
And before we go any deeper into the book, who is Drexel Deal?
Well, in a nutshell, I'm an individual who takes a lemon, or when life has thrown a lime at me and I try to see how much different recipes I can get out of it. I got involved deeply in the life of crime, and I decided to make crime a career. And that's a dangerous thing when anyone decides to make crime as a career. And as a result, I became one of the top generals in the rebellion raiders until one day I was watching an armored vehicle, and I attempted to rob, and I was shot some four times, and resulting in the loss of my sight.
Where was that incident?
It took place in the Palmdale area where the old Barclays Bank used to be right on there on the red light of Palmdale and Montrose Avenue.
Why did you decide to take on an armored vehicle? You must have known that armored cars or trucks, they carry money, and the people who are attending it are armed.
Well, Mr. Jones, I didn't roll out of bed one morning and decide I'm going to rob an armored car vehicle. It came about as a result of other smaller successes executed well, to the point whereby my confidence was to the point that I could believe I could take on an armored car vehicle, and most importantly, I had the quote-unquote hardware to get the job done as well.
Now, and as a result of that, you were shot and you were blind?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you said you had the hardware. Where would you have gotten hardware to execute a robbery, or the number of robberies that you did?
Guns is one of the easiest things to come across, sadly, in the Bahamas. And so I had ordered some 4 weapons, and I wanted a particular name brand of type of weapons, and the individual agreed to do so. And a week later, they were not in, and he was telling me a different story. And so I sensed he was trying to swing me. So when he bought his entire shipment in, I took everything.
And his entire shipment amounted to what?
6 handguns, semi-automatic weapons.
And you took all?
Took all.
Including ammunition?
Ammunition as well.
And so were you trading in guns then, or you kept all for yourself?
Kept all for myself. I was not a gun collector, or so to speak, or I was not one who was selling guns. And so to be sitting on so much firepower, it gives one this sense of a false confidence, basically. And so hey, why not? And I was targeting deposit bag robberies. before I move on to the armor car vehicle, just pull up on somebody who was about to make a deposit, and it's over in a matter of seconds. And so the armor car vehicle, I figured, okay, this should be a walk in the park as well.
Were you successful in getting depositors?
Yes, I was successful in, like I indicated to you, this armor car vehicle came about as a result of smaller successes. And it was due to these other deposit by robberies that somewhat built my confidence and provided me with the necessary funds to purchase the hardware that I felt confident enough that I could take on an armor car vehicle.
So you decided on a life of crime?
Yes, I had chosen crime as a career.
And there are many others who have done so in our country.
Yes, and and it's a sad state, as I tell you. And to top it off, I always knew that the police would never be able to catch me unless it happened. They caught me red-handed. And because you watch the crime scene investigations, I used to treat our law enforcement officers as if they were FBIs. And so that in itself kept me ahead of them, so to speak.
But from reading your book, you had a difficult life growing up. I believe you got involved with your first crime at you were imprisoned in your teens, eh?
Yes, I made prison at just 3 weeks shy of my 17th birthday. And it was all petty juvenile crimes of mischief, throwing missiles, and shop break-ins.
And shop break-ins.
Yes.
And when you went to prison, I believe that you said that you became a hardened criminal.
Yes. When I went to prison, I realized or noticed something rather peculiar. The individuals who were the celebrities or the quote-unquote rude boys, bad boys, these were the individuals who were charged with the murders, attempted murders, armed robberies, gun possession, drug possession, and it was them who told the stories. These were quote-unquote the movie stars, and with each story they told, I became more and more like them.
And you decided that when you came out, you would try something else.
Ironically, my first trip to prison, I hadn't decided to pursue a life of crime. I didn't know that, quote-unquote, I had somehow changed upstairs. Miles Monroe said something rather interesting. He said, the environment you permit determines the product you produce. So I found myself in this environment of individuals, and eventually, not knowingly, I had adopted their mindset in terms of resolving issues. And it was not until my second trip to prison when I was released that I determined to make crime as a career.
And when you were in prison, you would trade stories, you said, with the inmates.
Yeah, Tupac put a term on it, trading war stories.
Trading war stories.
Yes, individuals simply sitting back, sharing their past experiences. And it is something similar that is done in even locally in our police force. It is done in the FBI, the CIA, where they take various different field report stories, the incident that actually happened, and they capitalize on what went wrong and to see how individuals can learn from those mistakes, and they focus on what went right, and how the new recruits could basically also learn from those things that was done right in the field.
Before we delve any deeper into your book, you named it, "The Fighter of My Life is Wrapped Up in My Father." And you titled your book such because you didn't have a good father, eh?
Yes. Like I indicated to you, first of all, the book itself came to me in a dream. So I was dreaming. I was watching The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air one evening, and he had done something, and Uncle Phil on Fresh Prince had told him he needed to read this book. And so I figured in my dream, if Will Smith could benefit from this book, I sure could as well. And at that time, I was a book lover. I was reading like $600 worth of books a year in that regards. And so I got up, took note of the book, and went to purchase it at the local bookstore, and they told me the book doesn't exist. And it was then something registered in my spirit, the book doesn't exist because you haven't written it as yet.
And the title came to you?
Yes, in a dream.
I see. Now, tell us about your upbringing. I recall from your book, your mother worked and didn't spend the kind of time you thought. Your father tried to burn the house down. Tell us about your formation, your early days.
Well, I had a beautiful childhood up to a time that before my father left. I grew up in the area called Montel Heights, and everything was good until my father decided to move on with his life. And in moving on with his life, he didn't want us around. It was him who left the relationship for somebody else, but at the same time, he wanted to keep my mother on the side and still have this with new individual in his life. And when she stood her ground and said no, he decided one day to attempt to burn the house down. And as a child, when he left, he poured paint on everything we owned. So therefore, we were only left with the clothing on our backs. And as a child at the age of 5, I didn't understand it then, and I still can't understand it to this day, why he had to be so destructive.
So you came from a violent environment, you would say?
According to my mother, he was also abusive as well. I don't remember that. I guess as a boy, I somehow blocked those images away. Mm-hmm. But it was, quote unquote, somewhat violent.
And you would, well, it is said that you are a product of your environment. And so you would consider yourself to have been, in your early days and the days of your criminality, a product of your environment?
Yes, I was exposed to violence in the home. It was Dr. Carl Mellinger who said it, what is done to children, they will do to society. And amazingly, the very same thing that my father tried to kill us with, I became fascinated with fire. Mm. At the age of 6, I almost burned down my aunt's house. And it was a good thing there was an adult who was home who I caught a bed on fire, and they were able to drive the bed outside. If not, the entire house would have burned down.
So this phenomenon, violence, was ingrained in you?
Yes. And ironically enough, my father was once a police officer, and he was...
Was he really?
Yes. He was kicked off the force because he pulled a weapon on his superior and so forth.
Mm. I find that... anyway, so you went to high school, I believe?
Yes. I started C.I. Gibson in 1987.
Did you do well in school, or were you put out?
No, I didn't do well in school at all. I didn't have no motivation for learning. My mother told me during the early years of my schooling I was doing well, but after my father left, my interest in education left as well.
Tell us about your mother. You mentioned your father. Your mother, you said, worked 2 jobs? My
mother had 3 kids, and let me just say, she did her best with all 3 of us. I must say, much kudos goes out to my mother, because she was a provider. She didn't just sit back and stay in the predicament that she was in. She worked 2 jobs, one in the morning, and she worked in the evening. And so when we at school in the morning, she was at work, and when we come home in the afternoon, food was cooked for us. Somehow she would find the time to still prepare a meal for us, and she was off to work again. And so in the evening, we never saw her no more again until early in the morning, the next morning.
The next morning.
Mm-hmm.
What about spiritual grounding? Did you have any, you think?
I went to church, normally because I was sent to church, but basically it didn't take root in me. See, parents must, you talk about spiritual grounding. In Deuteronomy chapter 6, God gives us the perfect setting where he instructed the fathers to basically teach your children. Don't just send them to quote-unquote Sunday school or send them to church, but the spiritual teaching should take place at home, not at church.
So you grew up around the church according to your book?
Yeah, I grew up around the church.
You grew up around the church, but you weren't really interested. The church, you didn't connect.
No,
and the church didn't connect with you, and you didn't connect with the church.
There you go. Mm-hmm. But you know what's so sad? Even though I grew up around the church and there was no connection, at least I had something to fall back on when I lost my sight that I could have fallen on to. Today, you have a lot of young children who are not even going to church. So there's no quote unquote nothing to fall back onto.
But you went to church.
Mm-hmm.
You came from an environment where your mother provided. You dropped out of school.
Kicked out.
You were kicked out of
Yes.
school. For what reason?
Fighting. Just 2 weeks in the 12th grade, I was kicked out for fighting with outsiders.
With outsiders.
Yes.
And you had a demon in you, eh?
I wouldn't say a demon, but let me just, Miss Iris Ade, consultant at Disability Affairs Division, she put it best when she said, our young men are angry, and they have a right to be angry because as a country, we have failed them. I didn't realize that I was angry, not until writing this book. I had a street name that I got from in school, Raw Deal, and I used to draw a face around it. And I used to draw the mouth and the nose and an angry snarl. And so I was angry in school, even though I didn't realize that this anger was in me.
You needed anger management. You needed to be counseled for the anger that you had in you.
I needed some sort of intervention. My mother
Yes.
knew that I needed some sort of intervention because I was a very quiet child. And I had, even at the age of 13, I was still lighting matches and just watched the match burn out. And she arranged it so that I had a counseling session, no, an evaluation, a psychiatrical evaluation by Dr. David Allen. And it wasn't up until writing the book I asked her what was the result of it, and she indicated, well, they determined nothing was wrong with me mentally. It was just probably my home condition and probably missing my father.
You became a member of a gang.
Yes.
While you were attending school.
Before, it was after I got kicked out of school.
After you were kicked out?
Yes.
Why you became a member of this gang?
There's an individual by the name of Silver Fox. He used to play ball with us, and he heard about stuff I was getting into in the community and my penchant for graffiti, because I had the Palmdale Plaza written right up with my name. And he said to me, if you're carrying on this battle on your own, then you might as well link up with us. And that was how I became a member of the Rebellion Raiders.
So you were a graffiti artist?
Yes, from the store.
Just uglifying the place?
Yes, yes. Simply looking for attention. Individuals who write graffitis on walls are simply looking for attention.
But when you would have done this, you could, because these graffitis weren't done in broad daylight, were they?
When in the twilight of the evening, when don't forget, Palmdale is a business area, so you talk about after 5, 6 o'clock, it becomes almost like a ghost town. Mm. And so, in those times, I would be writing my names.
Now, you were looking for attention.
Mm-hmm.
And the gang provided you with attention and a kind of familial environment.
Yes.
It became your family.
Yes, an extended family. And what's so amazing, the leader of the rebellions, Scrooge, in my interview with him, he indicated, I came from as low as one can come with no mommy and no daddy. So in return, I built a family for myself. And these fellas were part of my family, so I had to look out for them as if I was looking out for my children. All the gang is an extended family. And
according to this book, 13 persons in a gang swelled into thousands, eh?
Yes, he took 13 unpretentious young men and grew them into thousands. And you know what he said to me? He said, the reason why individuals like to hang around me, because I made them feel appreciated and respected. He said, if you were a scary fella, but you were good at stealing cars, then be good at that. That's where your respect was coming from.
So you were in search of respect and some love.
There you go.
And you didn't get the love at home.
I got the love at home in terms of my mother providing, but when it comes, a male needs that manly assurance, so to speak, that manly affirmation that he can only get from a male in that regards, and my mother was unable to provide that for me.
Were there any men in the area in your... Because you see, sometimes some people consider that to be a cop-out, because there were a whole lot of young men in our country who are productive citizens, who are professional Bahamians, who had no father around. Their father abandoned the home, or they themselves had an early death. the father that is, and they turned out to be all right.
Yeah, but all right in what sense? I mean, Richard Raw, he said something pretty interesting. Individuals who have this quote-unquote father hunger tend to fill it either with power, violence, they tend to fill it with sex, or they tend to fill it with work or money in that regards. Even scriptures help us to appreciate. In Proverbs chapter 27, verse 7, when you are full, you will turn away from honey, but when you are hungry, everything that tastes bitter, every food that tastes bitter, tastes sweet to you. And so I was searching for something, and the gangs provide this quote-unquote approval that I was unable to find anyplace else. And individuals also too, individuals who are doing good in sports, they're getting the approval. Individuals who are doing good in school, they're getting quote-unquote that approval. Me, who was never involved in sports, who was never good in my schoolwork, I wasn't getting nothing.
So you needed some extracurricular activities.
Yes.
Music, sports, something, so that you would have been fulfilled.
Something to excelling.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I excel in doing nonsense.
And violence.
It's correct.
And criminality.
Yes.
Okay, let's take a break here. This is the platform, and today we are speaking with Drexel Deal. As you can appreciate, he lost his sight, he's blind, and he is telling us the story that he has in his book entitled The Fight of My Life is Wrapped Up in My Father. We'll come right back.